I want to tell you about something that changed everything for me, and I mean everything. I discovered it decades ago, but even now, as I share it with you, I feel the same electric current running through my body that I felt the very first time I truly understood its power. You know that problem you've been wrestling with? The one that wakes you up at 3 in the morning? The relationship that's crumbling, the money that's never quite enough, the health issue that terrifies you, the career that feels like a cage. I'm talking about that specific thing that right now, in this very moment, is sitting heavy in your chest like a stone. What if I told you that the reason it hasn't resolved isn't because you haven't tried hard enough, or because you haven't tried hard enough, or because you're not smart enough, or because the universe is against you? What if the real reason is far simpler and far more shocking than anything you've imagined? The problem persists because you keep feeding it, you keep visiting it, you keep turning it over in your mind like a worry stone, and every single time you do, you're actually making it stronger, more real, more permanent in your experience. I discovered something I call the Passover technique, and it's perhaps the most misunderstood principle in all of my teachings. People think I'm telling them to ignore their problems or pretend they don't exist. That's not it at all. What I'm sharing with you is infinitely more powerful and utterly revolutionary. Let me be very clear about what happened when I first stumbled onto this truth. I was working with a woman, let's call her Margaret, who came to me absolutely desperate. She had been diagnosed with a tumor. The doctors had given her their prognosis, and she was drowning in fear. Every waking moment was consumed with the tumor. She researched it obsessively, talked about it constantly, felt it in her body every second. She was living, breathing, and sleeping with this problem. And here's what I told her, and here's what I told her, and here's what I'm telling you right now. Margaret wasn't fighting the tumor. She was married to it. She was married to it. She had made it her constant companion, her identity, her reality. And your subconscious mind, that incredible force within you that creates your entire experience of reality, it doesn't judge what you give it. It simply accepts and manifests whatever you persistently feel and believe. Margaret was quite literally creating more of what she feared by giving it all of her attention, all of her emotional energy, all of her mental power. When I explained this principle to her, Margaret looked at me with a mixture of understanding and resistance that I've seen so many times over the years. "Dr. Murphy," she said, "are you telling me I should just ignore my problems?" She said, "Are you telling me I should just ignore my problems? Should I pretend everything is fine when it clearly isn't?" This is the crucial misunderstanding that trips up so many people on their spiritual journey. I leaned forward and said to her what I'm saying to you now. There's a vast difference between denial and redirection. Denial says, the problem doesn't exist. Redirection says, yes, this challenge is here, but I choose to focus my creative power on the solution rather than perpetuating the problem. You see, every moment you spend dwelling on what you don't want is a moment stolen from creating what you do want, is a moment stolen from creating what you do want. Your mental and emotional energy is the most precious resource you possess. It's the currency of creation itself. And just like money, you must spend it wisely and deliberately, or it will slip through your fingers on things that bring you no return. I shared with Margaret a technique that transformed her entire experience within weeks. I asked her to notice every time her thoughts drifted toward her fears and worries, not to judge herself, not to feel guilty, but simply to notice. And the moment she caught herself rehearsing disaster, she would gently but firmly redirect her attention to a mental scene that implied her wish fulfilled. For Margaret, that scene was simple and powerful. She would imagine herself sitting at her kitchen table, opening her bank statement, and seeing a healthy, growing balance. She would feel the relief, the gratitude, the security washing over her. She would maintain that feeling for just 30 seconds, sometimes a full minute. That's all it took. Within the first week, she caught herself worrying about money 17 times in a single day. 17 times in a single day. 17 times she redirected. By the second week, it was down to 9. By the fourth week, something remarkable happened. Not only were her worry sessions down to just 2 or 3 per day, but opportunities began presenting themselves. A former colleague called about freelance work. A refund arrived from an overpayment she'd forgotten about. Small things, yes, but they were the first green shoots of a different reality taking form. Within a week, something shifted in her entirely. She found herself waking up with a quiet confidence, a sense that the worry had loosened its grip. Not because her bank account had suddenly filled overnight, it hadn't, but because she had stopped feeding the fear. She had stopped feeding the fear. She had stopped rehearsing disaster. Here's what most people miss about this process. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the first step in faith. Your subconscious doesn't require a detailed blueprint of how your good will arrive. It only requires your good will arrive. It only requires your acceptance that it is arriving. Sarah's story illustrates a principle I've seen proven thousands of times. When you change the inner conversation, the outer circumstances must follow. Not sometimes, not if you're lucky, always. Because your external world is a perfect reflection of your internal world. It cannot be otherwise. Now, let me address something that troubles many people when they first encounter this teaching. They say, "But Joseph, I've tried positive thinking. I've affirmed and affirmed and affirmed, and nothing changed. In fact, things got worse." I understand this frustration. But here's where the confusion lies. Affirmation without conviction is just noise. It's like planting seeds on concrete and wondering why nothing grows. The words themselves hold no magic. It's the feeling behind the words, the conviction in your heart, the acceptance in your consciousness that's where the power lives. You cannot simply parrot phrases while your inner voice screams the opposite. Your subconscious mind responds to what you actually believe, not what you pretend to believe. If you say, "I am prosperous," while feeling desperate and broke, your subconscious receives only the feeling of desperation. Feelings are the language of the subconscious. Words alone are not enough. This is why I emphasize the state of consciousness you occupy. When you truly feel prosperous, when you can sit quietly and imagine your wish fulfilled so vividly that you feel grateful for it, your subconscious accepts this as instruction. It begins to reorganize your reality around this new assumption. Think of your mind as a garden. Your conscious thoughts are the seeds you plant. Your conscious thoughts are the seeds you plant. Your feelings are the water and sunlight. Your subconscious mind is the soil, rich, fertile, and ready to grow whatever you plant. If you plant seeds of doubt, fear, and limitation, that's exactly what will flourish in your life. But if you plant seeds of faith, abundance, and possibility, your subconscious will work day and night to bring those desires into reality. This isn't wishful thinking. This is how your mind actually functions. Your subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question whether you deserve something or whether you deserve something or whether it's realistic. It simply accepts what you repeatedly impress upon it and goes to work making it real. It's completely impress upon it and goes to work making it real. It's completely impersonal, like the soil that grows both flowers and weeds with equal efficiency. The soil doesn't judge, it just grows. Let me share something that happened in my practice years ago. A woman came to me suffering from chronic insomnia. She'd tried everything: medications, warm milk, counting sheep. Nothing worked. When I asked her what she said to herself before bed, she told me, "I just know I won't be able to sleep tonight. I just know I won't be able to sleep tonight. I never can." There it was. Every single night, she was programming her subconscious mind for sleeplessness. She was watering and nurturing the very condition she desperately wanted to eliminate. I taught her a simple technique. Before sleep, she would repeat gently, "I sleep in peace. I wake refreshed and renewed." That's it. No force. No strain, just a quiet, confident assertion impressed upon her subconscious as she drifted off. Within a week, she was sleeping through the night. Now, you might say, that was just the power of suggestion. Yes, exactly. That's the whole point. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis. You've been suggesting things to yourself your entire life. The question is, what have you been suggesting? Most people go through life hypnotizing themselves with negative suggestions. "I'm so forgetful. I never have enough money. I always get sick this time of year." Each statement is a command to your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind, and your subconscious is the most obedient servant you'll ever have. It says, "Your wish is my command," and sets about making your words come true. This is why your self-talk matters so profoundly. You are literally creating your tomorrow with the thoughts you think today. Let me tell you about a woman I knew who discovered this truth in the most remarkable way. She had been unemployed for 8 months. Every morning she would wake up and the first words out of her mouth were, "I'll never find a job. Nobody wants to hire someone my age." Day after day, interview after interview, she was rejected. Then one day she came to one of my lectures. When I explained how the subconscious mind works, something clicked for her. She realized she had been programming herself for failure with every word she spoke. So she made a change, a simple change, but a profound one. Every morning before getting out of bed, she would say, "I am valuable, employers recognize my worth. The perfect position is seeking me out right now." She repeated this throughout the day, whenever the old fearful thoughts tried to creep in. She spoke it with feeling, with conviction, as though it were already true. Within 3 weeks, she received a call for an interview. Within 4 weeks, she received a call for an interview. Within 4 weeks, she had a job offer that paid more than her previous position. She hadn't gained new skills in those 4 weeks. She hadn't suddenly become younger. But she had changed the instructions she was giving to her subconscious mind. Your subconscious doesn't judge whether what you're saying is good for you or bad for you. It simply accepts and acts. When you say accepts and acts, when you say, "I'm so forgetful," it says, "Yes, you are. Let me make sure you forget that appointment tomorrow." When you say, "I never have enough money," it says, "Understood. I'll make sure money slips through your fingers." When you say, "I always get sick in winter," it says, "Winter is coming. Time to prepare the illness." Now, I know what some of you are thinking. "Dr. Murphy, that sounds too simple. Can changing my words really change my life?" And my answer is this: your words are not separate from your thoughts, and your thoughts are not separate from your thoughts, and your thoughts are not separate from your reality. They are links in a chain. Your words shape your thoughts impress your subconscious creates your experiences. The question isn't whether this process works. It's already working, right now. The question is, what are you creating? Your subconscious doesn't judge, it doesn't debate. It simply accepts what you persistently feed it and begins to externalize that into your world. This is why two people can experience the exact same event and come away with completely different realities. One sees opportunity, the other sees disaster. The event is neutral. The interpretation is everything. I once knew a man who lost his job. He was devastated, convinced his life was over. Every morning he woke up rehearsing his tragedy. "I'm unemployed. I'm a failure. No one will hire me at my age." And you know what? He was absolutely right. Months passed and nothing came. His subconscious was loyal to the instruction, "I am unhireable." But then something shifted. He read a book, attended a lecture. Something sparked a realization. He began to change the conversation with himself. Instead of "I'm unemployed," he started affirming, "I am between opportunities, and the perfect position is seeking me right now." Instead of "I'm too old," he declared, "My experience is valuable, and the right employer recognizes this." Within 3 weeks, he received a call. Within 2 months, he was in a position that paid better than his previous job and gave him more freedom. The economy hadn't changed. The job market hadn't suddenly improved. He changed. His inner conversation changed, and his outer world had no choice but to follow. This is the principle at work, constantly. Your subconscious is like a faithful servant who never questions your orders. If you say, "I can't afford that," it responds, "You're right, let me make sure you can't." If you say, "Money comes to me easily," it replies, "Let me show you how." The problem is most people give contradictory orders all day long. They affirm abundance in the morning, then worry about bills all afternoon. They declare confidence before a meeting, then replay every past failure on the drive over. The subconscious becomes confused, receiving mixed signals, and the result is a mixed, mediocre life. Consistency is the key, not perfection but persistence. You must become more loyal to your vision than to your current circumstances. Your present situation is nothing more than the result of past thinking. It has no power except what you give it. When you stop feeding it your attention and emotion, it begins to dissolve. This is why I tell you with absolute certainty, your transformation begins the moment you decide it does. Not tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Not when circumstances change. Not when you have more money, more time, or more support. Right now. This instant. You see, most people are waiting for permission to change their lives. They're waiting for permission to change their lives. They're waiting for a sign, for the perfect moment, for someone to tell them they're worthy of success. But I'm here to tell you something radical. You don't need permission. You already have everything you need within you at this very moment. Think about water for a moment. When you pour water into a cup, it takes the shape of that cup. Pour it into a bowl, it becomes the bowl. It becomes the bowl. The water hasn't changed its essential nature, but it adapts perfectly to whatever container receives it. Your subconscious mind works the same way. It takes the shape of whatever thoughts you consistently pour into it. Now here's what most people miss. You can't pour new water into a cup that's already full of old, stagnant water. You must first empty it. This is why I emphasize that you must stop dwelling on past failures, past hurts, past limitations. You must consciously choose to empty your mind of these old patterns before you can fill it with new, life-giving thoughts. I've watched people cling to their problems as if they were precious possessions. They rehearse their difficulties. They recount their struggles to anyone who will listen. They wear their hardships like badges of honor. And all the while they're wondering why nothing changes. My friend, what you continually talk about, you continually experience. What you emotionally invest in, you bring into manifestation. There was a man who came to me years ago, completely broke, living in a tiny room, working a job he despised. He told me his entire life story, every injustice, every setback, every person who had wronged him. He knew his story backward and forward. He knew his story backward and forward. He could recite it chapter and verse. And that story had become his prison. I stopped him mid-sentence and said, "Now tell me the story of your success." He looked at me confused. "But I don't have any success to talk about," he said. And there it was, the core of his problem. He had a story about failure, but no story about failure, but no story about success. He could vividly describe his limitations, but couldn't imagine his triumph. We worked together to create a new story, not a fairy tale, not a fantasy, but a clear, definite vision of the life he intended to live. Every night before sleep, he would rehearse this new story. He would rehearse this new story. He would feel it, taste it, live it in his imagination with the same intensity he had once used to relive his failures. Within 6 months, his entire world had transformed. New opportunities appeared. People entered his life who opened doors. His circumstances rearranged themselves to match his inner vision. Did he work hard? Absolutely. But the work became inspired action rather than desperate struggle. The universe began to cooperate with him because he had finally aligned himself with its creative power. I want you to really understand what happened in his life, because it illustrates a principle that most people miss entirely. When he changed his inner conversation, he didn't just change his mood. He changed the actual vibration he was putting out into the world. And the world, being a mirror of consciousness, had no choice but to reflect back something different. You see, everything in this universe is energy vibrating at different frequencies. Your thoughts are not static, passive things. They are dynamic forces that create a specific frequency pattern. When you constantly think thoughts of lack, limitation and anxiety, you're broadcasting a signal that attracts circumstances that match that frequency. It's not punishment. It's not bad luck. It's simply the law of attraction responding to the signal you're sending out. The businessman I'm telling you about discovered this truth not through philosophy, but through direct experience. When he began affirming abundance, confidence, and success with genuine feeling, something shifted in how people responded to him. His clients started calling him back. Opportunities that had been invisible suddenly became apparent. It wasn't that the world had changed overnight. It was that he was now tuned to a different station, so to speak, and he could finally perceive the abundance that had been there all along. This is where most people struggle with these teachings. They want immediate, external proof before they'll commit to changing their inner world. But that's backwards. The external world cannot change until the internal world shifts first. You must become the change you want to see. You must embody the consciousness of the person who already has what you desire. Let me give you another example. This time from a woman who came to one of my lectures years ago. She was trapped in a marriage that had become cold and distant. Every day was filled with resentment and silent suffering. She would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking the same thought over and over. I'm stuck. There's no way out. This is just how my life will be. Now, here's what's crucial to understand. It wasn't the marriage itself that was imprisoning her. It was the belief, impressed upon her subconscious mind, that she was powerless. That belief became her reality. Her subconscious mind accepted it as truth and began to arrange circumstances to confirm it. When I spoke with her after the lecture, I asked her a simple question: what would your life look like if you felt free, loved, and at peace? She hesitated. The question seemed almost cruel to her because she'd spent so long convinced it was impossible. But I pressed gently. Just imagine it. What did that feel like? Tears came to her eyes. She described a life where she felt respected, where communication flowed naturally, where she woke up without that weight on her chest. I told her, that feeling you just described, that's what you must impress upon your subconscious mind, not the circumstances mind, not the circumstances, not the how, just the feeling of the wish fulfilled. She began a simple practice. Every night before sleep, instead of rehearsing her grievances, she would enter a drowsy, relaxed state and feel herself living in that atmosphere of peace and mutual respect. She didn't visualize her husband changing. She didn't demand specific outcomes. She simply felt the reality of harmony as though it were already true. Within 2 months, everything shifted. Her husband, responding to her changed inner state, began to open up in ways he hadn't in years. The coldness melted. They started talking again, really talking. And here's the beautiful part. She told me later that the external change was almost secondary to the internal one. She had become free inside first, and her outer world simply rearranged itself to match. This is the power of your subconscious mind. It doesn't judge, it doesn't debate. It simply accepts what you impress upon it and works tirelessly to bring it into manifestation. This is why it's absolutely crucial that you become the guardian of your own mind. You must stand watch at the door of your thoughts, because whatever you allow to enter, whatever you dwell upon, whatever you emotionally charge with feeling, that is what your subconscious will accept as instruction. Think of it this way. If you owned the most sophisticated computer in the world, would you carelessly allow anyone to walk up and program it with destructive code? Would you let random viruses corrupt its operating system? Of course not. Yet this is exactly what most people do with their subconscious mind every single day. They listen to the negative opinions of others and accept them as truth. They replay their failures over and over, embedding them deeper into their consciousness. They entertain fears, doubts, and worries as if these were honored guests rather than thieves breaking into their mental home. I want you to understand something profound. Your subconscious mind is always listening. Right now, in this very moment, it is recording not just the words you speak aloud, but the silent dialogue running through your thoughts. It's capturing the emotional tone of your inner world, and it's saying, yes, this is what we're creating. This is the pattern I should follow. When you say, I can't afford that, your subconscious doesn't argue. It says, understood, we are creating a reality of lack. When you say, I'm not good enough, it doesn't question you. It responds, received, we are manifesting unworthiness and limitation. When you declare, things never work out for me, it simply accepts this instruction and begins arranging circumstances to match this belief. But here's the beautiful reversal. The same principle works in your favor the moment you change the impression. When you affirm, I am divinely guided and prospered, your subconscious accepts this with equal readiness and begins orchestrating opportunities for abundance. When you claim, I am confident and capable, it starts aligning your thoughts, feelings, and actions with this new identity. When you state, I am healthy, whole, and radiant with vitality, it mobilizes the healing power within your body to make this true. The subconscious doesn't care whether your statement is currently true or not. It only cares about the mental and emotional impression you're making right now. This is why affirmations work when they're done properly, with feeling and conviction. You're not trying to trick yourself or engage in positive thinking for its own sake. You're impressing upon your subconscious mind the exact template you want it to follow. And here's what most people miss. Your subconscious will work tirelessly to bring your outer world into alignment with whatever you've impressed upon it. Let me give you a practical example from my own counseling practice. I once worked with a woman who had been struggling with chronic insomnia for years. She had tried every medication, every sleep technique, every remedy under the sun. Nothing worked. Why? Because every night as she lay in bed, she would think, I just know I won't sleep tonight. I never sleep well. I'm cursed with this terrible insomnia. Every single night she was programming her subconscious mind with the expectation of sleeplessness. Her subconscious, being the faithful servant it is, delivered exactly what she impressed upon it. When she came to me, I taught her to change her internal dialogue. Before bed, she would repeat with genuine feeling, I sleep soundly and peacefully throughout the night. My subconscious mind refreshes and renews my body while I rest deeply. She visualized herself sleeping peacefully, feeling the comfort of deep rest. Within 2 weeks, her insomnia began to lift. Within a month, she was sleeping through the night consistently. Nothing in her external circumstances had changed. Her bedroom was the same, her mattress was the same, her mattress was the same, her daily schedule was the same. What changed was the instruction she gave to her subconscious mind. This is the magnificent power you possess right now, in this very moment. You don't need anyone's permission to use it. You don't need special training or years of study. You simply need to understand this principle and begin applying it. Now, let's address something that stops many people from experiencing results: emotional conviction. You cannot simply mouth words mechanically and expect transformation. The subconscious mind responds to feeling, to the emotional tone behind your words. When you affirm "I am prosperous," but inside you feel poor, anxious, or fearful, which message do you think your subconscious accepts? It accepts the feeling, not the words. The emotion is the language your subconscious understands most fluently. This is why I've always emphasized that you must feel the reality of your desire as you affirm it. If you're affirming health, you must capture the feeling of wellness, the vitality, the ease of movement, the joy of a body functioning perfectly. If you're affirming abundance, you must feel the relief, the security, the expansiveness that wealth brings. Let me give you a practical example. Suppose you're affirming, "I am confident and successful in my career." If while saying these words, your stomach is tight with anxiety and your mind is replaying past failures, you're actually impressing failure upon your subconscious, not success. Instead, you must enter into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Close your eyes and imagine yourself already successful. See yourself receiving congratulations, feel the handshake of appreciation from your employer, sense the confidence radiating from your posture. Make it real in your imagination, and your subconscious will accept this imagined reality as instruction. The subconscious cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. This is not metaphorical, it's the actual mechanism by which your inner mind operates. When you imagine something with sensory vividness and emotional intensity, you're creating a neural pattern, a mental blueprint that your subconscious then works to manifest in your external world. Now, some of you might wonder, how long must I persist in this practice before I see results? This is where faith enters the picture. Faith, in the context of mental science, is not blind belief. It's the confident expectation that the law will work because it always works. It's universal, impersonal, and utterly reliable. You don't have faith that gravity will work, you simply know it does. Develop the same certainty about the law of your subconscious mind. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You trust the process, you water it, you give it sunlight, and you let nature do its work. Apply this same wisdom to your mental seeds. When you impress your subconscious mind with a desire, release it. Don't anxiously question whether it's working. Don't anxiously question whether it's working. Don't obsessively check for results every hour. This constant mental interference is like digging up your seed daily. You destroy the very process you're trying to activate. I've witnessed people sabotage their own demonstrations simply because they couldn't leave their mental garden alone. They would affirm their desire in the morning, then spend the afternoon doubting it. They would visualize success at night, then wake up fearful it wouldn't happen. This is not faith, this is mental warfare against yourself. Your subconscious mind works best when you get out of its way. Think of it like falling asleep. The harder you try to force sleep, the more it eludes you. But when you relax, when you let go, sleep comes naturally. Your desires manifest through the same principle of effortless acceptance. Now, let me address something that troubles many people, the question of time. How long does it take for the subconscious to manifest your desire? This question itself reveals a misunderstanding of how consciousness operates. The subconscious mind exists outside of linear time as you know it. It operates in the eternal now. When you truly accept something as true in your inner world, the outer manifestation begins immediately. But your conscious experience of that manifestation depends on various factors: the intensity of your belief, the absence of counter-impressions, and sometimes simply the natural sequence of events required to bring your desire into physical form. I knew a woman who desperately wanted to sell her house. She had financial pressures and needed a quick sale. Every day she worried, every day she worried, every day she feared, every day she imagined the worst. And of course months passed without a single serious offer. Then one evening she came to understand this principle we're discussing. She realized her anxiety was the very force blocking her demonstration. That night she made a decision. She relaxed completely. She relaxed completely. She pictured her house sold, felt the relief, gave thanks for the perfect buyer, and released it entirely. Within 1 week, she received an excellent offer. Within 3 weeks, the sale was complete. What changed? Not the real estate market, not the real estate market, not the house. Only her inner conviction shifted, and the outer world rearranged itself to match. This is what most people never grasp. This is what most people never grasp. They wait for circumstances to change before they dare to change their feeling. They say, I'll feel abundant when the money comes. I'll feel confident when I get the promotion. I'll feel loved when someone finally chooses me. But that is backward thinking, and it keeps them locked in the prison of their current reality. The truth is this: the feeling must come first, always, without exception. You cannot wait for the world to give you permission to feel the way you desire to feel. The world is not going to hand you confidence, abundance, or love on a silver platter. The world is only ever going to mirror back to you what you are already assuming to be true about yourself. So if you want different circumstances, you must first dare to feel differently. Right now, today, this very moment. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Joseph, how can I feel wealthy when my bank account is empty? How can I feel confident when I've failed so many times? How can I feel confident when I've failed so many times? How can I feel loved when I'm all alone? Here is where most people stumble. They confuse feeling with pretending. They confuse feeling with pretending. They think I'm asking them to lie to themselves, to paste a fake smile on their face and ignore reality. But I'm not asking you to deny facts. I'm asking you to deny facts. I'm asking you to rise above them. There is a difference between denying your current circumstances and refusing to be imprisoned by them. When you understand that your present situation is simply the result of yesterday's thinking, you realize you are not stuck. You are only experiencing the lag, the delay between the old assumption and the new. Think of it like turning a large ship. When the captain turning a large ship. When the captain turns the wheel, the ship doesn't pivot instantly. It continues forward for a time, gradually shifting direction. Only after sustained turning does the vessel move onto its new course. Your life works the same way. The moment you shift your inner conviction, the wheel has turned, but the outer circumstances may continue in the old direction for a brief period. This is where faith is required. This is where faith is required. This is where most people abandon ship thinking nothing has changed. They turn the wheel, wait 5 minutes, see the same horizon and declare, see, it doesn't work. But the ship was turning all along. They simply didn't hold the wheel steady long enough to see the evidence. The same law applies to every technique I've shared with you. Whether you're visualizing in the silence of your bedroom, repeating affirmations in the mirror, or praying with feeling before sleep, the principle is identical. Asterisk persistence in the assumption creates the realization. Asterisk was the financial struggle. She was a talented artist, but her work never sold. Galleries rejected her. Patrons passed her by. She was convinced the world was against her creativity. I asked her a simple question. When you paint, what do you feel? She said, I feel like I'm wasting my time. I feel like no one will ever want what I create. There was the root. She was painting from lack, not fulfillment. Every brushstroke was soaked in doubt. I instructed her to change her inner speech. Before painting, she was to close her eyes and feel asterisk, really feel asterisk, the joy of knowing her work was already valued. She imagined collectors admiring her pieces. She heard in her mind the words, your art moves me. She felt the satisfaction of making a living doing what she loved. For the first 2 months, nothing changed externally. Her work still sat unsold, but she persisted. Every single day, she saturated her imagination with the feeling of success. Then something shifted. A small gallery reached out. Someone had recommended her. 1 painting sold, then 2. Within 6 months, she had her first solo exhibition. Within a year, she was supporting herself entirely through her art. What changed? Not her talent, not the market, not luck. Her asterisk inner conviction asterisk changed, and the outer world rearranged itself to match. This is what I mean by living in the end. You don't wait for evidence to believe. You believe and evidence follows. You see, most people approach their desires like they're trying to peek through a locked door. They keep checking the handle, rattling the hinges, pressing their handle, rattling the hinges, pressing their ear against the wood, listening for any sound that might indicate progress. And every time the door stays shut, they grow more convinced it's never going to open. But I'm telling you, you already have the key. You've always had it. The key is your consciousness, your assumption of the wish fulfilled. The door doesn't open because you found proof. The door opens because you found proof. The door opens because you walked through it in your imagination first. Let me give you something concrete to work with. There was a woman who came to one of my lectures years ago, desperate to change her financial situation. She was drowning in debt, working 2 jobs, barely keeping her head above water. She asked me, "Dr. Murphy, how can I possibly feel wealthy when every bill I open reminds me I'm broke?" And I told her what I'm telling you now. I said, stop reacting to your current circumstances as though they're permanent. They're not facts. Carved in stone, they're reflections of your past thinking. If you want different reflections, you must change what you're projecting. She didn't like that answer at first. She wanted a technique, a shortcut, some magic phrase. But I pressed her. I said, before you go to sleep tonight, you're going to imagine a bank statement that thrills you. See the numbers, feel the relief, experience the freedom. Don't analyze it. Don't question where the money will come from. Just accept it as done. She did. Night after night, she fell asleep feeling financially free. And here's what happened, not overnight, but gradually, unmistakably, opportunities appeared. A friend mentioned a better paying position. An unexpected refund arrived. Small amounts began accumulating. Within months, her entire financial landscape had shifted. Now, skeptics will say, that's just coincidence. She was working 2 jobs, of course things improved, but they missed the point entirely. She had been working those same jobs for years with no improvement. What changed wasn't her effort. What changed wasn't her effort. What changed was her state of consciousness. She stopped living in lack and started living in abundance, and reality reorganized itself accordingly. This is the principle at work. Your outer world is always conforming to your inner convictions, always, without exception. Let me tell you what happens when you truly understand this law. Everything shifts, not someday, not gradually. Right now, in this very moment, as comprehension dawns in your consciousness, I've watched people spend decades trying to change their circumstances through sheer physical effort alone. They work harder, they push more, they exhaust themselves, and yes, sometimes they see temporary results. But the moment they stop pushing, everything slides back. Why? Because they never changed the mental pattern. They never changed the mental pattern. They never altered the inner conviction that was broadcasting the original condition into their experience. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question whether your beliefs are true or false, good or bad, beneficial or destructive. It simply accepts what you consistently impress upon it. Think about that for a moment. Your subconscious is the most faithful servant you will ever have. It says yes to everything you decree with feeling and conviction. When you say, I never have enough money, your subconscious says, yes, master. Let me arrange circumstances to prove that true. When you say, people always let me down, your subconscious responds, absolutely, watch how I'll bring evidence of that into your life. It's not being cruel. It's not being cruel. It's being obedient, perfectly, completely obedient to the dominant patterns you've established. Now, here's where it gets extraordinary. The moment you change the inner pattern, the outer world must respond. Not because you're forcing it, not because you're forcing it, not because you're manipulating reality, but because you've changed the mold, and life has no choice but to pour into the new shape you've created. I remember a woman who came to me convinced she was destined for poverty. It was her inheritance, she said. Her parents were poor. Their parents were poor. Their parents were poor. Poverty was in her blood, in her family line, in her very DNA. She spoke of it as though it were an incurable disease. I asked her one question: what if poverty isn't in your blood? What if it's only in your blood? What if it's only in your thinking? That question disturbed her. It challenged everything she'd accepted as unchangeable truth, but it also awakened something, a possibility, a doorway. I began to understand that God isn't a distant judge on a throne somewhere beyond the clouds. God is the creative power within you, the infinite intelligence that breathes you, that beats your heart without your conscious effort, that heals your cuts and fights infection while you sleep. This power is not separate from you. It is asterisk you at your deepest level. When you pray, you're not begging an external deity for favors. You're impressing your subconscious mind with a clear image of your desire. You're aligning yourself with the infinite creative power that already dwells within you. Prayer is not supplication, it's affirmation, it's acceptance. It's the mental act of claiming what is already yours in the invisible realm of consciousness. I started experimenting with this principle in small ways. I would sit quietly before sleep and visualize specific outcomes, not with desperation, but with the feeling of already having received. I would imagine the congratulations, the relief, the satisfaction as if it were happening now. And gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, my outer world began to shift. Opportunities appeared that I hadn't noticed before. People responded to me differently. Doors opened. And here's what's crucial: these weren't miracles in the supernatural sense. They were the natural result of changing my inner state. When you change your beliefs, you change your perceptions. When you change your perceptions, when you change your perceptions, you change your actions. When you change your actions, you change your results. I studied every spiritual tradition I could find. The Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, Buddhist teachings, the writings of Emerson and Troad. And beneath the different terminology and cultural clothing, I found the same core truth: consciousness creates reality. Your thoughts, accepted and believed, become your experience. This wasn't positive thinking in any shallow sense. It was a complete recognition that the world you see outside is a reflection of the world you hold inside. As within, so without. As above, so below. These ancient maxims weren't poetic metaphors, they were statements of psychological law. Think about it this way. If you walk into a room absolutely convinced that people will reject you, what happens? You carry yourself differently. Your body language screams insecurity. You avoid eye contact. You speak hesitantly, and people respond to what you're projecting. Then you say, "See, I knew they'd reject me." But you created that rejection through your own expectation. Now reverse it. Instead of expecting rejection, begin to expect acceptance. When you walk into that room tomorrow, I want you to feel, deep in your bones, that you are wanted, that you are wanted, that you are valued, that people are pleased to see you. Not because you're putting on a performance, but because you're putting on a performance. But because you've changed the mental image. You've stopped poisoning your own well. And watch what happens. Watch what happens. Watch how people respond to you differently. Not because they changed, because you changed the broadcast. And the world always reflects back what you're sending out. Here's another example. A woman told me once, "Dr. Murphy, I'm so unlucky with money. Every time I get ahead, something happens. The car breaks down, or I get a medical bill, or something else drains my account." I said, "Do you expect these things to happen?" She paused. Then she said, "Well, I mean, they always do." "Exactly," I told her. "You're not unlucky. You're expectant. You expect loss. You expect emergency. And your subconscious mind, being the faithful servant it is, brings you exactly what you expect." She was shocked, because she'd been calling it bad luck for years. But it wasn't luck at all. It was luck at all. It was law, mental law. So I gave her a new instruction. Before sleep, she was to imagine a bank statement with a growing balance. She was to feel the security of that, the peace of it. And during the day, whenever fear about money came up, she was to gently replace it with the thought, "Money flows to me easily and consistently, not as a desperate chant, but as a quiet, confident knowing." Within 3 months, she received a raise she hadn't asked for. A relative paid back an old loan she'd written off. And yes, the car needed repairs, but she found a mechanic who did it for half the price she expected. Did the universe suddenly favor her? No. She stopped expecting disaster. And when you stop expecting disaster, and when you stop expecting disaster, you stop creating it. She began to expect good things. She began to expect good things. She began to see possibility instead of catastrophe. And here's what happened. Her health improved, her relationships softened, her opportunities expanded, not because the universe suddenly decided to favor her, but because she stopped blocking her own good. You see, most people walk through life carrying an invisible shield. They think it's protecting them, but it's actually preventing them from receiving. They've been hurt, disappointed, let down, so they build walls. They say, "I won't expect anything good, so I won't expect anything good, so I won't be disappointed." But what they don't realize is that this very attitude is a creative force. When you refuse to expect good, you're actually expecting bad. And your subconscious mind, being the faithful servant it is, goes to work making that expectation real. I've watched this pattern destroy marriages. A woman gets hurt once, and she carries that hurt into every interaction with her husband. She expects him to disappoint her. She expects him to disappoint her. She expects him to be insensitive, and so she interprets everything through that filter. A neutral comment becomes an attack. A forgotten errand becomes proof of his indifference, and the man, feeling constantly judged and rejected, eventually becomes exactly what she feared: distant, defensive, disconnected. But it didn't start with him. It started with him. It started with her expectation. Now, I'm not saying we should be naive. I'm not suggesting you ignore red flags or trust blindly. What I'm saying is this: there's a profound difference between wisdom and fear. Wisdom says, I'll be discerning. Fear says, everyone will hurt me. Wisdom says, I'll learn from the past. Fear says, the past will repeat forever. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between a lesson and a life sentence. When you decide that because one person betrayed you, all people are untrustworthy, you've just programmed your subconscious to prove that belief correct. And it will. It'll guide you toward untrustworthy people. It'll cause you to miss the signs of genuine kindness. It'll make you sabotage good relationships before they have a chance to bloom. I knew a man who lost everything in a business partnership that went wrong. His business partner embezzled funds, destroyed his reputation, left him in debt. Devastating, absolutely devastating. And for years afterward, this man couldn't enter into any collaboration without suspicion poisoning it. He'd check the books obsessively. He'd question every motive. He'd hold back his full commitment because he was protecting himself from another betrayal. And guess what? He kept attracting problematic partnerships. Not because the universe was punishing him, but because his energy was screaming, I don't trust you. And people who are trustworthy, they felt it. They walked away. Only those who didn't mind his suspicion, often because they had something to hide, stayed close. And so he lived in a cage of his own making. A cage built not of iron bars, but of assumptions, of fears, of memories that had long outlived their usefulness. You see, the subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between a threat that happened 20 years ago and one that might happen tomorrow. It simply responds to the pattern you've established. And his pattern was clear: trust equals betrayal, openness equals betrayal, openness equals pain, connection equals danger. So he stayed safe and lonely and deeply, profoundly unfulfilled. Now, I want you to understand something crucial here. This man's subconscious wasn't trying to hurt him. It was trying to protect him. That's what makes this so tragic. The very mechanism designed to keep us safe becomes the prison that keeps us small. His mind was saying, remember what happened before. We're not doing that again. We're going to be vigilant. We're going to see the signs early. We're going to protect ourselves. And in doing so, it created the exact reality it feared most. Because here's what happens when you expect betrayal. You create an atmosphere where authentic connection becomes impossible. People sense it. They feel your walls. They notice how you hold back, how you test them, how you never quite let them in. And eventually they stop trying. Not because they wanted to betray you, but because they got tired of being treated like they would. The subconscious mind is the most faithful servant you will ever have. It never questions. It never argues. It simply executes the beliefs you've given it with absolute precision. You give it the belief, people will hurt me, and it will orchestrate your entire life to prove that belief correct. It will guide your eyes to notice every slight, every ambiguity, every possible sign of rejection. It will filter out the kindness, the loyalty, the genuine affection that might contradict your core belief. It will shape your behavior in ways that push people away, then whisper, contradict your core belief eventually. See, I told you, they all leave eventually. This is the terrible power of a wounded subconscious mind left unhealed. But here's where hope enters the picture. Here's where everything can change. Because just as the subconscious mind can trap you in a pattern of pain, it can also lift you into a pattern of pain. It can also lift you into a pattern of peace. Just as it can orchestrate failure, it can orchestrate success. Just as it can create loneliness, it can create connection. The mechanism is the same, only the instruction changes. This is why the work of transformation is so simple, yet so profound. You don't need to learn a new skill. You don't need to acquire something external. You already possess the most powerful creative instrument in existence, your subconscious mind. What you need is to redirect it, to give it new instructions, to impress upon it a different pattern. Think of a person who has lived their entire life believing they are unworthy of success. Every morning they wake with a vague sense of inadequacy. They approach opportunities with hesitation. They interpret setbacks as confirmation of their limitations. This isn't philosophy, this is their lived experience, generated moment by the subconscious acceptance of unworthiness. Now, what happens when this same person begins to feed their subconscious a different idea? Not through force, not through willpower, but through gentle, consistent repetition. Before sleep they affirm, I am worthy of success, I am capable and deserving. At first, the conscious mind rebels. It presents evidence to the contrary. It argues, but the subconscious doesn't argue. It doesn't judge the truth or falsehood of what you give it. It simply accepts and creates. Week after week, the new impression deepens, and then something remarkable happens. The person begins to notice opportunities they would have previously overlooked. They speak with a confidence that surprises them. They make decisions aligned with success rather than fear. Their outer world begins to reorganize itself around this new inner conviction. Did the world change? No. The world responded to the change within them. The subconscious mind, now impressed with worthiness, began expressing worthiness through every channel available: thought, feeling, action, and attraction. This is not magic. This is law. The law of mind, the law of consciousness, and it operates with absolute consistency. You cannot impress your subconscious with poverty and expect abundance. You cannot saturate your inner world with fear and expect peace. The harvest must correspond to the seed. But here's the beautiful truth. You can plant new seeds at any moment. Your past does not bind you. Your history does not define your future. The subconscious mind lives in the eternal now. It doesn't care what you believed yesterday. It only responds to what you accept today. This is your moment of liberation. You can release every limiting belief that has ever held you back, and you can do it right now, in this very instant. I've seen people carry the same story for decades. I'm not good at relationships because my parents divorced. I can't be wealthy because I grew up poor. I'm not creative because I grew up poor. I'm not creative because a teacher told me so when I was 8. These stories become prisons, but here's what you must understand. You're holding the key. You've always been holding the key. The subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, but remember what happened in 1987. It simply accepts what you're feeding it right now. This is why affirmations work, but only when you understand the principle behind them. You can't just repeat words mechanically while your deeper mind rejects them. You must feel the truth of what you're declaring. Let me give you a powerful technique. When you catch yourself repeating an old, limiting belief, stop immediately. Don't fight it. Don't resist it. Simply replace it with its opposite truth. If you hear yourself thinking, I always struggle with money, pause and consciously declare, I am now open to infinite abundance. Money flows to me easily and naturally. Feel these words. See yourself living this reality. Your subconscious will accept whichever belief you emotionally energize. This is mental gardening. You're pulling out weeds and planting flowers. The soil of your subconscious doesn't care which seeds you plant. It will grow whatever you give it with feeling and conviction. If you plant seeds of lack, you'll harvest lack. Plant seeds of lack, you'll harvest lack. Plant seeds of abundance, and abundance becomes your reality. I once counseled a woman who had been sick for years. She had seen countless doctors, tried every treatment. Nothing worked because she identified completely with being ill. Her entire self-concept revolved around her disease. When I asked her to describe herself, the first words out of her mouth were, I'm a sick person. There was your problem, clearly revealed. We worked together to change this identity. Instead of I am sick, she began declaring, I am health itself. Every cell in my body radiates perfect vitality. At first, her conscious mind rebelled. The symptoms were still there, but she persisted, and within 3 months, her doctors were astonished. The condition that had plagued her for years simply vanished. What changed? Not her body first, but her consciousness. Her body simply followed the new blueprint she impressed upon her subconscious mind. This is why I say to you, stop waiting for conditions to be perfect. Stop waiting for conditions to be perfect. Stop waiting for permission from the outer world. The outer world is a mirror, and it can only reflect back to you what you have already accepted as true within yourself. A man once came to me and said, Dr. Murphy, I want to start my own business, but I don't have the capital, I don't have the connections, I don't have the experience. I asked him a simple question, do you have the consciousness of a successful businessman? He looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. I told him, "You are not trying to get success. You are trying to be successful. There is a profound difference. When you are successful in consciousness, the ways and means appear, the money comes, the contacts emerge, the doors open, but you must first claim the state." He began working with his imagination. Every night before sleep, he would imagine congratulating himself on a profitable year. He would feel the satisfaction of independence, of serving others through his work. He didn't visualize the struggle. He didn't rehearse the obstacles. He simply lived from the end result in his mind. Within 6 months, he met a former colleague at a coffee shop. Pure chance, he thought. That colleague became his first investor. Within a year, his business was profitable. Within 2 years, he had a team of 12 people. Was it luck? Was it coincidence? No, it was law. He changed his inner state and the outer world rearranged itself to match. You see, your subconscious mind is utterly impersonal. It does not care whether you imagine success or failure, health or sickness, abundance or poverty. It simply accepts what you consistently impress upon it and brings it forth into manifestation. It is like the soil. It will grow weeds just as readily as roses. The choice is yours. So I ask you now, what are you planting? What are you planting? What mental seeds are you depositing into the fertile ground of your subconscious every single day? If you are constantly saying, "I can't afford this," your subconscious hears, "I am poor." If you say, "I always get sick in winter," your subconscious says, "Very well, let us create that experience." If you say, "Nobody respects me," your subconscious orchestrates circumstances to validate that belief. But when you begin to affirm, "I am healthy, I am prosperous, I am respected, I am loved," and you feel the truth of these statements, you are issuing new orders. And your subconscious, loyal servant that it is, begins immediately to reorganize your world. This is why affirmations are not mere wishful thinking or empty repetition. They are commands. They are commands. They are instructions issued to the most powerful creative force in your possession. When you affirm something with feeling, with conviction, with emotional intensity, you are not pretending. You are not pretending. You are not lying to yourself. You are re-educating your subconscious. You are replacing old, destructive patterns with new, constructive ones. Let me give you a concrete example. A woman once came to me in despair. She had been struggling financially for years. Every month was a crisis. She told me, "Dr. Murphy, I work hard, I'm honest, I'm responsible, but money just runs through my fingers. I never have enough." I asked her a simple question. "What do you say to yourself about money?" She paused, then admitted, "I always say to yourself about money." She paused, then admitted, "I always say I'm broke. I say I'm not meant to be rich." There it was. She had been programming herself for poverty. I taught her to change her inner speech. Every day, morning and night, she began to affirm, "Money flows to me easily and abundantly. I am a magnet for prosperity. Wealth is my natural state." At first she felt foolish. The words seemed hollow. But I urged her to persist, to feel the words, to imagine the reality they represented. Within 3 months, she received an unexpected promotion. Within 6 months, she had paid off her debts. Within a year, she had savings for the first time in her adult life. What changed? Not the external world, not at first. What changed was her inner world, and as within, so without. The inner shift preceded the outer transformation. This is the immutable law. You cannot harvest what you have not first planted. You cannot harvest what you have not first planted. You cannot reap abundance in your external circumstances until you have first sown it in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. Consider the businessman who came to me, drowning in debt, his enterprise on the verge of collapse. Every morning he would wake with a knot of anxiety in his stomach. Every evening he would review his ledgers with despair. His consciousness was saturated with lack, with failure, with the fear of ruin. I asked him a simple question: "What occupies your mind in the quiet moments before sleep?" He answered honestly, "I see my creditors. I see my creditors. I see the bills I cannot pay. I see my family suffering. I see the business closing its doors. And you wonder why these things persist?" I said to him. "You are fertilizing the seeds of failure with the water of constant attention. You are saying to your subconscious mind, 'This is what I accept. This is my reality. Make it so.' I instructed him to change his inner conversation. Before sleep each night, he was to imagine a different scene entirely. He was to imagine a different scene entirely. He was to see himself opening letters from satisfied clients. He was to feel the relief and joy of financial abundance. He was to imagine thanking his employees for their excellent work in a thriving enterprise. But Dr. Murphy, he protested, that feels like lying to myself. None of that is true. Then what you are doing now, dwelling on failure, that must be truth to you. Is it serving you well? He had no answer for this. The technique I gave him was not complex, but it required discipline. Every night without fail he was to construct a mental scene that implied the fulfillment of his desire. Not the desire itself that's crucial, but the end result. He was to live in that scene until it took on the tones of reality. For weeks, nothing changed externally. His creditors still called. The bills still arrived. But something profound was shifting beneath the surface. His anxiety began to ease. His anxiety began to ease. He found himself making decisions from a place of clarity rather than panic. Where before he had seen only obstacles, he now noticed opportunities that had been there all along. Then the external world began to rearrange itself. An unexpected contract arrived. A former client returned with new business. Solutions presented themselves where before there had been only dead ends. Within 6 months, his business had recovered. Within a year, it had surpassed its former success. What changed? Not the market conditions, not the economy, not his creditors' generosity. What changed was the garden of his mind, and from that inner transformation, the outer world reorganized itself to match. Now here's what mystifies most people who first encounter this principle. They assume transformation requires years of therapy, decades of meditation, or some cosmic alignment of the stars. But the truth is far simpler and far more immediate. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between a vivid mental experience and a physical one. When you imagine something with emotional intensity and sensory detail, your subconscious accepts it as reality and begins working to manifest that reality in your external circumstances. I've seen this demonstrated countless times. A woman came to me once, trapped in patterns of self-sabotage that had followed her since childhood. Every time opportunity approached, she'd unconsciously destroy it. New job? She'd arrive late until she was fired. New relationship? She'd pick fights until the person left. She understood her pattern intellectually, had read all the psychology books, could explain her behavior brilliantly. But nothing changed until she understood this one principle: intellectual understanding changes nothing. It's the subconscious impression that changes everything. We stopped analyzing why she did what she did. Instead, we began impressing her subconscious with a new pattern. Every night before sleep, when the subconscious is most receptive, she would visualize herself succeeding. Not in vague, hopeful terms, but in specific, sensory-rich detail. She felt the handshake of her employer praising her reliability. She experienced the emotional reality of being someone who protected and nurtured her own good fortune. Within 6 weeks, her entire behavioral pattern had shifted. Not through willpower. Willpower is the ego's exhausting attempt to override the subconscious, but through impression. The subconscious, impressed with a new pattern, simply began expressing it automatically. This is the mechanics of transformation. You don't fight the old pattern. You don't wrestle with your demons. You starve the old by feeding the new. You withdraw attention from what you don't want and place it, with feeling and conviction, on what you do want. The subconscious doesn't care about your worthiness. It doesn't judge whether you deserve what you're impressing upon it. It simply accepts and expresses. This is why a person can come from nothing and rise to greatness, while another born into privilege can descend into misery. The outer starting point is irrelevant. The inner direction is everything. And here's what most people don't understand about this inner direction. It's not about forcing, straining, or wrestling with your thoughts. It's about surrender to a higher pattern within you. Think of a river. The water doesn't fight its way to the ocean. It follows the natural course carved into the earth. When you align with your subconscious mind, when you impress upon it the reality you desire, you're not pushing against life, you're flowing with a power that already knows the way. I've seen people exhaust themselves trying to make things happen through willpower alone. They clench their fists, grit their teeth, and push harder and harder against their circumstances. And what happens? They burn out, they collapse, because willpower is the tool of the conscious mind, and the conscious mind is limited, finite, easily depleted. But the subconscious never tires. It works while you sleep. It orchestrates circumstances you couldn't possibly arrange with your waking mind. It opens doors you didn't even know existed. There was a woman who came to me years ago, desperate to heal a relationship with her estranged daughter. They hadn't spoken in 5 years. The bitterness ran deep on both sides. She asked me, "What do I do? How do I fix this?" I told her, "You don't fix it with actions first. You fix it in consciousness first." Every night before sleep, she imagined embracing her daughter. She felt the warmth of reconciliation. She heard her daughter's voice saying, "I love you, Mom." She didn't rehearse arguments or plan conversations. She simply lived in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. 3 weeks later, her daughter called. Out of nowhere, no logical reason, just a sudden impulse to reach out. Was it coincidence? Was it magic? No, it was law. The subconscious mind, impressed with the image of reconciliation, moved both mother and daughter toward that reality. It created the inner conditions that manifested as outer circumstances. This is what I mean when I say your inner direction determines everything. You don't need to know asterisk how asterisk it will happen. You only need to know asterisk how asterisk it will happen, because you've accepted it in mind first. And here's what happens next once you've accepted something in your mind. Once you've impressed it upon your subconscious with feeling and conviction, your entire world begins to reorganize itself around that assumption. You start noticing opportunities you would have walked past before. You meet people who seem to appear at exactly the right moment. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. And here's the beautiful part: none of this feels forced or strained. It feels natural, inevitable, as though the universe itself is conspiring to bring your assumption to life. I've watched this happen thousands of times. A woman assumes she is valued and respected in her workplace. Within weeks, her manager approaches her with a promotion she never approaches her with a promotion she never applied for. A man assumes he is financially secure and abundant. Suddenly, an old friend calls with an investment opportunity, or a side project he'd forgotten about starts generating income. These aren't coincidences. These are the outer effects of an inner cause. Your subconscious mind is connected to infinite intelligence. It knows how to bring about what you've accepted as true. It orchestrates events, arranges circumstances, guides you to take the right actions at the right time, all without your conscious interference. This is why I say you don't need to figure out the how. The how is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is the acceptance, the feeling, the mental agreement that what you desire is already yours. Think of it this way. When you plant a seed in the ground, do you dig it up every day to check if it's growing? Do you try to force the roots to spread or the stem to push through the soil? Of course not. You trust the natural process. You water it, you give it sunlight, and you let nature do what nature does. Your subconscious works the same way. You plant the seed, the mental image, the assumption, the feeling, and then you let it grow. You don't interfere with doubt or worry or impatience. You simply trust. This is the essence of faith. Not blind faith, but intelligent faith based on understanding how your mind works. You're not hoping something magical will happen from outside yourself. You're relying on a law as dependable as gravity, the law of mind. What you impress upon your subconscious must express in your experience. It has no choice. That's its function. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need to spend hours in meditation or affirmation. You need to spend moments in absolute conviction, repeated throughout your day. A few minutes in the morning, deliberately impressing your desire upon your subconscious with feeling. A few minutes before sleep, when your conscious mind relaxes its grip and your subconscious becomes most receptive, and then this is crucial, you must learn to gently redirect your thoughts whenever they drift toward doubt or fear. I'm not suggesting you suppress negative thoughts. That only gives them power. I'm suggesting you replace them. When you catch yourself thinking, "I'll never have enough money," you pause, you breathe, and you calmly, deliberately think instead, "Money flows to me easily and continuously," not as a desperate affirmation, not as a desperate affirmation, not as a hopeful wish, but as a statement of truth you're choosing to accept. You're choosing to accept. Your subconscious doesn't argue, it doesn't evaluate. It doesn't evaluate. It simply accepts whatever you persistently feel to be true and works to make it so in your external world. I've seen people transform their entire financial situation in months, not through lottery wins or inheritances, but through changed thinking that led to changed opportunities. Suddenly they notice possibilities they'd overlooked. They make connections that lead to new income streams. They find themselves saying yes to opportunities they would have previously declined out of fear. The same principle applies to health. Your body is constantly renewing itself. Science tells us that most of your cells replace themselves within months or years. What determines the pattern of that renewal? The blueprint held in your subconscious mind. When you persistently hold an image of vibrant health, when you feel yourself whole and strong, your subconscious directs the healing intelligence within your body toward that pattern. I've witnessed individuals reverse conditions their doctors called permanent, simply by changing the dominant impression in their subconscious mind, not through denying their current condition, but through refusing to accept it as their permanent reality. There's a difference, you see, between acknowledging where you are and accepting it as where you must remain. You can say, yes, this is my current experience, but I'm now impressing a new pattern upon my subconscious, and change is already underway. That's not delusion. That's not delusion. That's understanding how the law works. Your subconscious doesn't argue with you about what's possible or impossible. It doesn't have opinions about whether you deserve what you're claiming. It simply accepts the dominant impression and sets about making it objective. This is why I've seen people transform their circumstances in ways that seemed miraculous to observers, but were perfectly natural expressions of law to those who understood what they were doing. I remember a woman who came to one of my lectures years ago. She was in her 50s, had worked in the same menial position for decades, and felt completely trapped by her circumstances. She told me she had no education, no special skills, no connections. Every fact she stated was true in the outer world. But I asked her a simple question: can you imagine yourself doing work you love, being appreciated, and earning more than enough to live comfortably? She paused, and then something shifted in her expression. Yes, she said. Yes, I can imagine that. Then that's where we begin, I told her. She didn't need to figure out how. She didn't need to map out every step. She simply began every night before sleep, imagining herself in a fulfilling position, hearing words of appreciation, feeling the satisfaction of meaningful work. 6 months later, she wrote to me, through a series of events she could never have orchestrated consciously, she had been offered a position that perfectly matched her inner vision. Someone had recognized talents in her that had been dormant for years. Doors opened that she didn't even know existed. Was it luck, coincidence? No. It was law in operation. The subconscious, impressed with the image of fulfillment and appreciation, began to orchestrate circumstances, guide her attention, and open pathways that aligned with that impression. This is how it always works. You don't need to see the entire staircase. You just need to take the first step, and that first step is always an inner one. The feeling of the wish fulfilled becomes the cause. The outer transformation is the effect. And here's what many people miss. The subconscious works just as efficiently whether you're impressing it with limitation or possibility.